Legends of the Skinwalker with Marty Garza. You're listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Everest Plateau. And I have my pyramid, my fantastic pyramid ashtray right here at my side. We have Marty in studio with us today.
What's up, buddy?
Good to be back as always.
And yes, we got a great show planned out for you guys. Well, I think, is it planned? I mean, is this a...
Planned, not planned.
Yeah, so it's getting hot here. And what do we got for agricultural update? Everything's green. Grapes are going through veraison. We said that already.
Gotta inject some Epsom salt. 15 pounds per acre. Go buy store-bought Epsom salt, dissolve it into a bucket of warm water, and inject it into the irrigation.
Yeah.
15 pounds per
What's
acre.
that for?
Magnesium. So it's a cheap way to get it.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, and still lots
The
of...
grape leaves have this like yellow tiger stripe pattern forming on them. Have you noticed?
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
And it's a magnesium deficiency.
Deficiency in magnesium. Okay. Yeah. Yep. So still lots of mowing. Harvest is coming up soon. August is what we're planning for.
Probably going to be late August.
Think late.
Just because of the freeze and we had a late bud break.
That's true. That's true.
So
Yeah, that makes sense.
but we got veraison, which is the grapes are turning color. I guess I probably said that last week.
Yeah.
Got all the nets stapled up,
I saw that.
closed
Yep.
up, keep the birds out.
Still some birds in there, but mostly they're out.
They find their ways in.
They do, and then they get stuck.
Couple of birds in the wine. It's no big deal.
All right.
Just kidding.
It's MOG is what they call that. Material other than grapes. Yeah, so we got a lot of plans for this the end of this year. Going to be a lot of trips happening, so that's going to be fun. We're going to Scablands in September. Mm-hmm. And I think the Cumberland tour is in November. Not sure if we're going to be on that one or not, but
Yeah.
as far as I know, that one is happening in November. That's Randall's tour in his backyard. And then it's, I think, very possible that we're going to Egypt in October. So,
That's right.
Yeah. Ben needs additional hosts to help him out on his October trip, and he's asked us to go. So I think that's going to be happening.
Holy crap!
Yeah, it's going to be great. And so what we're doing Skinwalker Ranch today, right? That's the main topic, basically.
Yeah, allegedly.
Allegedly. I can't hear him in my headphones.
Oh.
Are you hearing him?
Yeah, I got him. Looks like you're screwed, bro.
Yeah.
No, I'll give you I'll hook you up. Here you go.
Okay.
How about that?
Give me a little test.
Test.
There it is. There he
All
is. All right, cool. Appreciate that, Kyle.
No problem.
Handling all technical difficulties flawlessly.
That's right.
Zero mistakes. All right, let's go ahead and
So,
do
dang it.
Space Weather News from spaceweather.com. First X flare of solar cycle 25 on July 3rd. For the first time in almost 4 years, the sun produced an X-class solar flare. This is an important milestone. X-flares are the most powerful kind of explosion on the sun, responsible for the deepest radio blackouts and the most intense geomagnetic storms. Many more X-flares are likely in the months and years ahead as solar cycle 25 approaches peak activity in approximately 2025.
Think of it, Liam. An explosion.
Current conditions, solar wind speed is 329.8 kilometers per second, and the density is 9.1 protons per cubic centimeter. Current sunspot number is 60. Neutron count is 8.9% above the space age average, rated as high. And the KP index is 2, which is rated as quiet, and the 24-hour max is also 2. So there you go. Space Weather News weekly update and current solar and space conditions for weather.
You got a crypto update?
Oh, I do. Yes, I do have the crypto update. Let me pull that up real quick.
You trying to jip us on crypto?
Let's see what the old Bitcoin is doing here. Come on. I don't know.
I heard it was creeping back up a little bit.
Well, hopefully. Man, what is the deal here? There it is. All right, Bitcoin, $33,945.50. And Ethereum is $2,229.90. And it looks like the market is down right now, but it's up from when I looked at it earlier today, so that's good. Yeah.
All right. 33,000.
Yeah.
That's a good one. All right, I got some stories here. My favorite one for today is from Science Daily. Why does Mercury have such a big iron core? Magnetism. A new study disputes the prevailing hypothesis on why Mercury has a big core relative to its mantle. For decades, scientists argued that hit-and-run collisions with other bodies during the formation of our solar system blew away much of Mercury's rocky mantle and left the big, dense metal core inside. But new research reveals that collisions are not to blame. It's the sun's magnetism. William McDonough, a professor of geology at the University of Maryland, and Takashi Yoshizaki from Tohoku University developed a model showing that the density, mass, and iron content of a rocky planet's core are influenced by its distance from the sun's magnetic field. The paper described the model. The paper describing the model was published on July 2nd, 2021, in the journal Progress in Earth and Planetary Science. The four inner planets of our solar system, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, are made up of different proportions of metal and rock, McDonough said. There is a gradient in which the metal content in the core drops off as the planets get farther from the sun. Our paper explains how this happened by showing that the distribution of raw materials in the early forming solar system was controlled by the sun's magnetic field. McDonough previously developed a model for Earth's composition that is commonly used by planetary scientists to determine the composition of exoplanets. His seminal paper on this work has been cited more than 8,000 times, which I learned is like, just as an aside, people in the scientific community will often judge a paper's
On how often it's
relevance
been cited.
or whether it's a good paper or a bad paper based on how many times it was cited.
That's right.
And so you could see how easy it is for a bad paper to become thought of by people who have never read it as a very good paper because it was cited so many times by other people.
That's right.
These are how agendas are moved forward, folks. But anyway, this guy's paper was cited more than 8,000 times. McDonough's new model shows that during the early formation of our solar system, when the young sun was surrounded by a swirling cloud of dust and gas, grains of iron were drawn toward the center of the sun's magnetic field. When the planets began to form from clumps of that dust and gas, planets closer to the sun incorporated more iron in their cores than those farther away. The researchers found that the density and proportion of iron in a rocky planet's core correlates with the strength of the magnetic field around the sun during planetary formation. Their study suggests that magnetism should be factored into future attempts to describe the composition of rocky planets, including those outside our solar system. The composition of a planet's core is important for its potential to support life. On Earth, for instance, a molten iron core creates a magnetosphere that protects the planet from cancer-causing cosmic rays. The core also contains the majority of the planet's phosphorus, which is an important nutrient for sustaining carbon-based life. Using existing models of planetary formation, McDonough determined the speed at which gas and dust was pulled into the center of our solar system during its formation. He factored in the magnetic field that would have been generated by the sun as it burst into being and calculated how that magnetic field would draw iron through the dust and gas cloud. As early solar system as the early solar system began to cool, dust and gas that were not drawn into the sun began to clump together. The clumps closer to the sun would have been exposed to a stronger magnetic field and thus would contain more iron than those farther away from the sun. As the clumps coalesced and cooled into spinning planets, gravitational forces drew the iron into the core. When McDonough incorporated this model into calculations of planetary formation, it revealed a gradient in metal content and density that corresponds perfectly with what scientists know about the planets in our solar system. Mercury has a metallic core that makes up about 3/4 of its mass. The cores of Earth and Venus are only about 1/3 of their mass, and Mars, the outermost of the rocky planets, has a small core that is only about 1/4 of its mass. This is cool, dude.
Yeah.
This new understanding of the role of magnetism, the role that magnetism plays in planetary formation, creates a kink in the study of exoplanets, because there is currently no method to determine the magnetic properties of a star from Earth-based observations.
Oh, yeah. So that may be another Goldilocks zone factor that we can't detect yet.
Yep. Scientists infer the composition of an exoplanet based on the spectrum of light radiated from its sun. Different elements in a star emit radiation in different wavelengths, so measuring those wavelengths reveals what the star and presumably the planets around it are made of. You can no longer just say, oh, the composition of a star looks like this, so the planets around it must look like this, Donahue says. Now you have to say, each planet could have more or less iron based on the magnetic properties of the star in the early growth of that solar system. So the next steps in this work will be for scientists to find another planetary system like ours, one with rocky planets spread over wide distances from the central sun. If the density of the planets drops as they radiate out from the sun the way it does in our solar system, researchers could confirm this new theory and infer that a magnetic field influenced planetary formation.
Wow.
That's really cool. I love that. It's one of those things that it seems obvious once you've heard it, right? Because I've never thought of that before, but it's just like, oh yeah, it just makes sense.
So wait, they're saying that electromagnetism
may be a large factor in the creation of stuff in the universe.
That's right.
Seems like someone should really come up with something that could explain that.
Yeah, I wonder if you could just apply that to the entire universe and maybe come up with some kind of theory.
Well, if somebody's done that, I've never heard of it.
So I wonder if when meteors hit Mercury, it goes.
Yeah, that's right. A nice bell. We got a much bigger bell than ours.
That's right.
So Mars is like, it's on the very outermost, place where you can have, a good magnetic field in a planet, a planetary magnetic field.
Yeah, and it doesn't have one anymore, which makes sense, I guess, if it's so far out that it's got the smallest iron core and its magnetic field is now dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why are we going there? Let's go towards the sun. We need more magnets. I mean, if we can't get that magnetic field going,
right?
What's the point?
Yeah.
See, with my
let's go live in spacesuits.
My current perspective, the glaring observation I made in that is the lack of a caveat that says life as we currently understand.
Yeah,
it.
of course. Yes.
Yes,
Absolutely.
of course.
Why is there always the assumption that life must be as we know it?
Well, they just said carbon-based life. They did say carbon-based life. And that is, just saying that assumes that there's a possibility that there could be other types of life that are not carbon-based.
Yeah.
But even then, they're
So I'll give them that.
extremophiles.
Yeah. Even carbon-based life may be able to exist outside of parameters that
Good
we
point.
understand.
Yeah.
All right. What else you got?
This is the new gigantic comet.
Oh, yes.
This is from Scientific American by Jonathan O'Callaghan, June 30th.
How did you print those out, by the way?
At work.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was telling you. Like on Fridays, I need to go in there and print my articles before I come home.
Okay.
So I get a printer.
Yeah.
Far beyond the orbits of Neptune and Pluto, a dark and mysterious expanse of space tantalizes astronomers. Here, as many as trillions of comets are thought to swarm, hurled to their present locale by Jupiter and other planets billions of years ago. They form a giant sphere known as the Oort cloud that envelops the solar system and stretches out to perhaps a couple of light years from the sun. No one really knows just how many comets exist in the Oort cloud or its true extent, because so little illuminating sunlight reaches that remote region. But occasionally, a passing star or galactic tides will stir these icy leftovers from the solar system's dawn, causing comets to fall towards the distant sun and into the observability of our telescopes. So, these so-called long-period comets have an orbit of thousands or millions of years and are predominantly small, no more than a few kilometers across. Yet, last week, astronomers announced the discovery of one with truly behemoth proportions, a giant comet that may measure hundreds of kilometers from edge to edge.
Man.
Now, efforts to train more telescopes in the comet's direction to unearth its secrets of the deep are well underway. So, initially dubbed 2014 UN 271, the object has been officially named.
We're all going to die?
Basically, they have the official name, but we're going to call it Bernardinelli Bernstein for its discoverers. Bernardinelli and his University of Pennsylvania colleague Gary Bernstein. It was first observed in 2014 by a project called the Dark Energy Survey, DES. But Bernardinelli, they spell it different right there. That's weird. And Bernstein only found the comet recently after it popped out of their analysis of the 80,000 or so images taken by DES over the past several years. The images from 2014 revealed it to be lurking at about 30 times the distance between Earth and the Sun, or 30 astronomical units. Now, 7 years on, the object is at 20 astronomical units and continuing to approach us. Its closest point to the sun will be 10.9 astronomical units, which it will reach in January 2031. That is not too much farther out than the orbit of Saturn, close enough that some have envisaged sending a spacecraft to the object on a fleeting visit. Current estimates suggest the comet takes 3 million years to orbit the sun, traveling out to a distance of nearly 0.9 light year well into the Oort cloud before swooping in again. Wow. What was the periodicity of destruction of the Earth?
27 million years.
Okay, 27. All right. Okay. Both the object's size and its looming proximity have captivated astronomers. Despite receiving 400 times less sunlight than Earth's surface at its current location, the comet is bright enough to be seen by telescopes, which hints that its size must be somewhere between 100 and 370 kilometers. The uncertainty arises because of the object's unknown reflectivity and shape, but at either end of the scale, this estimate would still make it much bigger than any previously known comet. The next largest in terms of its nucleus, Hale-Bopp, which wowed stargazers in 1997, measured a relative paltry 60 kilometers across. Relatively paltry.
Yeah.
The Bernardinelli-Bernstein comet is certainly the largest comet we've seen in the modern astronomical era, says Alan Fitzsimmons of Queen's University. We've had tremendously bright comets over recorded history, but that was before the invention of the telescope. Efforts to study the object since it was announced have been swift. Already, a team of astronomers has been able to detect signs of activity, most likely melting ices forming an atmosphere or coma around its solid nucleus, confirming it to be a comet. Its brightness has increased a lot, which means that it's active, says Rosita Kokotenekova of the European Southern Observatory, who led the observations using a network of telescopes in the Southern Hemisphere. Getting continued rapid observations will be crucial in learning more about the comet. There might still be a possibility we can see a rotational signal from the nucleus. When the activity gets stronger, it will be completely obscured. Observing that activity will be enlightening, too, because we've never observed a comet being active so far out from the sun. This will allow researchers to probe the regions of the solar system where the cometary activity begins. From the object's initial apparition in DES optics in 2014 to 2018, it did not appear to show activity. meaning it likely switched on at some point in the past 3 years. It's going to give us a really nice ability to study what happens in this transition region from being a frozen ice ball or out in the Oort cloud to a fully active comet in the solar system. So, I mean, I can keep going.
Yeah, and I wonder if, is it going to undergo fragmentation?
Yeah. Okay, so let me see if I could...
Because if it undergoes fragmentation, there's no telling where those fragments will end up. And if it passes anywhere near any of the outer planets, they say it's going to come within basically Saturn. So it has to pass a couple of large planets before it gets there. Their orbits, anyway. I don't know if they'll be in the area. And I also don't know I can't remember. I've seen diagrams, but I don't remember how much it's tilted to the ecliptic.
But listen to this. I mean, there's going to be some breakup. It's already
turning active.
Getting volatile, and it's way out there.
Right.
At its current distance, temperatures are too low for water ice to melt. So the comet, which may be on its first foray into the inner solar system, must have some other type of ice that is melting.
Yeah.
The best guess would be carbon monoxide, because we know that's present in comets, and it's also very volatile. In part because astronomers still know so little about the object and have never seen anything quite like it before, its exact nature remains unknown. It is really a large comet or something. Is it really a large comet or something else entirely?
Yeah.
Some people are speculating it could be round, almost in hydrostatic equilibrium, which makes it go in the direction of dwarf planets. This seems unlikely, however, given that most models suggest an icy object must be in the vicinity of 800 kilometers across before its own gravity begins sculpting it into a spherical shape. So, I mean, its size estimates are based on albedo.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it could be, there could be like stuff obscuring its actual true size.
And its albedo is going to be based on what its surface is made of.
Right. Yep.
And if you're just guessing at that, then you're guessing at the albedo.
Yeah. So to pin down the object's true size, the Hubble Space Telescope is the only current facility with sufficient power to peer through the coma and resolve the size of the nucleus. But as of this writing, the formal request to study the comet using the prized orbital observatory has not been approved. Other telescopes are capable of probing different features, though, such as its composition. So, anyway, pretty cool.
Yeah.
We're going to get to learn a lot more about comets.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's all for today. I got this Dragon Man follow-up, and really all I wanted to tell you guys was the story about how it was found. This guy who actually had the skull, because remember the skull was just handed over to scientists from the guy who dug it up out of the river. So they say, as the story goes, the specimen was originally unearthed from the bed of the Songhua River by workers building the bridge in Japanese-occupied northeast China in 1933. The crew foreman recognized the skull's value and didn't want it falling into the hands of the Japanese occupiers, so he stowed it. He wrapped it up and he put it down in an abandoned well. And then about 80 years later, as he was dying, he told his grandchildren the story of how he got the skull. They went to look, and it was still down there.
Man.
Okay. But anyway, the headline of this article is, "The debate over Dragon Man shows that human origins are still kind of messy."
Yeah, there you go. That's it.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, well, I got a few emails here, and then we can start talking about Skinwalker and then take a break. So let's see what we got here. This is called, let me see who this is from Matt. This is called Psychedelic Religion Rabbit Hole. Dear Snake Bros, to preface this message, I don't care if you read this email on the show. You can if you want to, but I am mainly writing this because I want to share my theory with you guys, Kyle and Russ, so this message might be a little long. I recently read the book, The Immortality Key, by Brian, and he does a good job of supporting the theory that psychedelics played a role in all major religions, including early Christianity. His evidence includes scientific analysis of ancient beer vessels from Göbekli Tepe and early Christian wine chalices, which show psychedelic substances in many cases. just to name a few. And he makes the case that the sacraments in almost all major religions were psychedelic in their original forms. The other day while watching a YouTube video on prehistoric cave art, I had an idea. What if these early caves that have abstract cave art are, rather than shelters, the original temples, or what later evolved into temples? Mushrooms are known to grow in caves and are actually the ideal environment for them to grow, a place where certain strains would be known to occur naturally. The places where these mushrooms grew then became the places where people who ate the mushrooms communed with God, or where God was found. These caves then evolved into primitive temples, and then at some point, who knows, maybe pyramids and Gothic cathedrals. Maybe the origin of art, cave art, is the place where the most renowned art is always found: temples, churches, cathedrals, etc. And I am suggesting that these were places where people would access the spiritual world through psychedelics and or have knowledge imparted to them through psychedelics. Marescu follows the evolution of death cults from Göbekli Tepe, who drank the psychedelic beer to commune with the dead, which later evolved into the Greek mystery cults of Demeter and Dionysus, which had a secret mystery drink known as koukeon, and then to Christianity, which in ways is almost identical to the Dionysus cults. He tells us his account of an early Roman underground catacomb and a ceremony called refrigerium, in which early Christians drank psychedelic wine to commune with their dead ancestors. There are images in the book of artwork drawn on the walls of the catacomb depicting what they experienced just like in the ancient caves. Also, a quick Google image search for mushrooms and ancient cave art shows some crazy ancient cave paintings of people with their heads depicted as mushrooms, some of them similar to the halo depicted on holy people. I have had many dreams where I have been given specific knowledge of things which turned out to be true. I have also recently read a paper, The Origins of the Arabic Legends of the Pyramids by A. Fodor, which examines pyramid myths throughout history. One of the focuses of this paper is how in all of the pyramid myths, knowledge is imparted or given rather than reasoned out. This is also true of alchemical texts and myths. Many breakthroughs in science and art have said to be given in dreams. I suggest that the ancients knew this and that psychedelics may have been the doorway to this realm. Perhaps there was utility in these religions rather than just butt-flat mentality. The myths connect the pyramids to this type of knowledge transfer. As I said, I attached a copy of this paper I mentioned. It is really worth the read if you guys are interested, and so is The Immortality Key. Anyways, I do want to thank you guys for what you do. I wouldn't be able to come up with crazy theories if it wasn't for the 30% brain expansion I always get listening to Snake Bros. And the topics you cover are always stimulating and make me think about things deeply. From Matt.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I don't know. I like the idea of the cave art and all that kind of stuff sort of translating eventually over into building these giant stone structures and putting awesome art inside there. That's kind of cool. But somehow what I think are the original pyramid structures, not the sort of maybe what might be, a cargo cult type building of pyramids. But like the Great Pyramid doesn't seem like it was meant to just go into and do stuff in there for people.
Yeah.
I mean, right? I mean,
Yeah.
how do you get past the plugs, right? I don't know. Maybe we haven't found all the passages. It just doesn't. I don't see how that fits in my head, with the pyramids.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I no longer think of them as some kind of ceremonial,
Right.
Tomb.
tomb type spiritual thing.
Yeah, and they're kind of lacking in artwork.
Right.
Right.
Not
Yeah,
decorative.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
But of course, the pyramid texts or something,
yeah.
that's later stuff, right? I mean, they were plastering on the walls and painting
Yeah.
all these.
Well, I mean,
hieroglyphs
I think some of those pyramid texts are written in the hard stone, but yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, but those were histories and stuff. I don't know. It's the cave art is interesting. Again, I read Gordon White's book about this topic too, Starships, where he talks about this and the idea that it was the contact with the other that sort of jump-started the human mind, or what we think of as the human mind now. And whether you take contact with the other to be aliens or the spirit realm or whatever, that artwork appears, and the concept of ceremony in general, burial practices, like the concept of like, why will you bury somebody with stuff? Like you like, what's the point of that unless you think there's something after death? Right. So there's all kinds of ideas, whether that came about by way of psychedelics in order to cause contact with the other, or contact with the other led people to psychedelics because it was a way that they could contact them on a more regular basis. I don't know, but it's all very interesting, and I agree the Immortality Key has done some good work in looking into that. But yeah, man, thanks for the email. Interesting stuff. And let's see, we got another one here. This is from...
Send us more theories that I can trash. I'm just kidding. It's cool. It's good stuff, buddy.
This is from Nick the Biological Robot.
Yeah, hey.
He says, "Dear Snake Family, a hopefully quick email to share a few thoughts that have been bouncing around in my brain recently, none of which probably make any sense. Straight to it then. 1. I think I'm right in saying that, as the theory goes, that time goes quicker at high speed and in proximity to bodies with higher gravity. What then if it's not only time that is dilated in these situations, but also distances, i.e. space? What if distances far away from large gravitational bodies are stretched so that if you could look at it from afar, what is measurable as, say, a mile on Earth might be the same as 100 miles in deep space, making it much easier and quicker to travel between stars at sublight speeds? Is that how the aliens get here? I would imagine astrophysicists might have noticed that if this was the case. And then again, if time goes slower there in the absence of gravity, then wouldn't it all cancel out? No idea. Space-time is hard." 2, could tales and myths of spoken magic spells, and maybe even prayer, have come about from our ancient ancestors observing and mimicking more advanced people using voice-controlled technology and communications devices? That's cool.
What? I got distracted.
Yeah, could the idea of myths and magic and spoken magic spells come about from ancient peoples seeing more advanced people using voice communication?
Yeah.
Right? You're like, "Hey Siri," right?
Yeah.
And magic happens.
That's cool.
3, snakes! 4, you know how a prism splits visible light into the colors of the rainbow? Could maybe pyramids be that shape to similarly split other forms of electromagnetic radiation or earth energy into other or more usable forms? 5, I recall way back when I was a small boy in the late 70s or perhaps early 80s watching a TV show that was old even then, black and white, and maybe in the who knows when, 30s, 40s, 50s, about a kingdom of people that were clearly ancient. They had castles and shields and swords and the like, but also lasers and power weapons. It falls right in line with the many of the discussions you and we all have, and I wonder if the makers of it were onto something. It was fascinating, and I'd love to watch it again. My searches to find it have failed, though, so if anyone has ideas, I'd love to hear them. So yeah, if anybody knows of a TV show that was black and white where they had castles and shields and swords, but also lasers, Nick the Biological Robot would like to know what show that was. He says, "That's all. Hope you all have and had a great Easter break." Yeah, that shows you how far behind we are here. Still loving the show. Awesome as always. Keep up the great work. Much love to all. Nick the Biological Robot. P.S. I want some of your wine. What would it take for you to ship me a bottle or two, and how much would it cost me here on the other side of the planet?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to figure that out.
Yeah.
We'll get back to you on that one.
Yeah. No, those are all great ideas, man. I really love the magic spells thing. That's really cool. And yeah, I think we have talked about the concept of pyramids being prisms. Have we discussed that before? Does that ever come up? It seemed familiar when he said it. So I don't know.
Seemed new to me, but
okay. Or maybe it seems familiar to me because I've read this email before. And
that's right.
Months ago. That might be. I'm like, I've heard this before. All these ideas are not new. Sorry, Nick. This is what happens when we're way behind on the emails. All right. Well, that's it for the emails today. We'll take a couple of minutes to talk about the main topic of the show, and then we'll take a break. All right. Hand it over to Marty here. What do you got?
Well,
go.
I'm just prefacing this. I guess we'll get started in the meat of this thing after the break, but just want to kind of set this up and say that from my observation, it seems as though most of the podcasts and YouTube, channels and everything that have discussed the topic of Skinwalker, they kind of go straight to the sensational and they sort of gloss over kind of the heart of the matter.
Yeah.
And laying down the groundwork that might, give us or assist in getting a better understanding of maybe the bigger picture of what might be going on there.
Mm-hmm.
So some of this might seem more like a history lesson than talking about, crazy phenomena. We'll get to the crazy phenomena, but I do want to kind of lay a little bit of groundwork. Also, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording here, but I didn't want to necessarily rehash a lot of what was in part 4, or I think it was when we discussed. We discussed Skinwalker for a segment and a half, I believe. So, definitely we're going to want to refer people back to that episode to kind of fill in some of the gaps and maybe some of what we'll discuss today.
Yeah.
I'm sure some of it we're going to have to go over to have this make some sense, but there was a lot of more detailed stuff in that in terms of some of the phenomenon that was experienced. We're going to talk about some different aspects of that today.
Okay.
Yeah, man, I want the history lesson. I didn't do my homework. I was supposed to read a book and go listen to the episode, and I didn't do any of that.
Let's see if I can find it.
So going in cold.
4? What episode number was part? There it is, 186. So yeah, he's telling people if you want to go back and check episode 186, UFOs part 4, because we did do some Skinwalker discussion. But
yeah, pause the show and we'll see you in a minute.
Yeah.
See you in 3 hours.
That's right.
All right, you're back. Sweet.
All right, glad to have you back. Let's take.
Now we're gonna take a break.
Yeah.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Brothers of the Serpent podcast here with Marty and the Cube. About to do the deep dive into Skinwalker Ranch. Lay it on me, buddy.
I got my Red Bull. I'm ready.
Okay. On June 30th, 1996, the Utah Desert News published an article by Zach Von Eck titled Frequent Flyers. The article begins with the amusing statement, quote, "For a species that supposedly doesn't exist, aliens sure do get around." Quote, "My personal opinion, not speaking for the Hansen Planetarium or Salt Lake County, is that the universe is teeming with life," said Patrick Wiggins, a spokesman for the planetarium. Terry and Gwen Sherman wish that some of that teeming intergalactic life would find somewhere else to hang out. "For a long time we wondered," this is a quote, "For a long time we wondered what we were seeing and if it was something to do with something top secret," said Terry Sherman, who reluctantly agreed to speak publicly about the activity for the first time. "I don't know really what to think about it." This was the first publication announcing to the world the existence of what came to be known as Skinwalker Ranch. But this story started many centuries before the Shermans ever purchased the infamous ranch.
Yep.
Skinwalker lore is ancient and is associated with the Miku Wes and these are difficult to pronounce, Uahem Esuk, the little men or elves that were believed to dwell here before man. They were a race described as orangutan-like with short, squat bodies and long arms that hung down to the ground. They're believed to still live among the rocks and in underground dwellings identifiable by mounds, termite mound-like structures. But beware, as they are considered dangerous.
Yeah.
Yinaldashii, is the Navajo word for skinwalker. And I apologize if I'm butchering this because it's very difficult to pronounce. Which roughly translates to by means of all fours. Some traditions believe a man, woman, or child can become a skinwalker by committing any kind of a deep-seated taboo, such as killing a family member or a loved one, or participating in pedophilia or necrophilia. By doing so, the individual surrenders their humanity and descends into the realm of darkness and evil. Quote, the skinwalkers are dark spirits that use the skin or even flesh of anything living that may serve its purpose. They use certain animal parts as totems. For example, they will take the claws of a bear or the antlers of a deer. The skinwalker derives its ability to transform from these totems, which allows them to communicate with the spirits of alternative planes and dimensions. From these spirits, they obtain the ability to work spells and dark magic. Offering up these spirits, the souls of animals, is often the price paid for their assistance. Depending on the influence and the power of the spirit, small animals such as rabbits and squirrels might be sufficient, but other more powerful spirits require larger, more powerful souls.
Where is this lore coming from?
Like Native Americans.
This is the
ancient Native
This
American.
is the Navajo.
You kind of hear these brush off type explanations for what a skinwalker is. So I wanted to really understand this. So I kind of did some deep diving in things that had nothing to do with Skinwalker Ranch. A lot of this stuff was more looking into the legends and from the Navajo and from the Uintas and others. That idea is actually not limited to just specific, tribes or nations.
Right, yeah, no, it's more widespread than one, yeah.
Yeah. Author Ryan Skinner states that the Navajo believe, quote...
Wait, his name is Skinner?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. The skinwalker has the power to affect the memory of its victims. Usually, to do so requires either the use of cadaver dust, direct eye contact, or much in the same way as voodoo, possession of an item that belongs to the victim, and it is then used as part of a ritual or ceremony. As a result of this power or influence, the skinwalker can obligate the victim to perform an act or a duty which is afterwards forgotten. The skinwalker can also make his victim see something that isn't really there or believe something that never really happened.
Yeah.
It's believed that the skinwalker gains strength from the fear it instills in others. This is why they often frighten people but do not cause them actual physical harm.
Right.
The Navajo believe that to speak of the skinwalker invites them to take an interest in you, so they rarely speak of them.
What are we doing? This is bad.
According to lore, much like other mystical creatures, the skinwalker cannot enter a dwelling unless invited. So they rely upon various forms of deception to lure victims into either summoning them or lure them outside by imitating a familiar voice or calling out in distress.
There are no babies in the woods.
And none of you are allowed in the cube.
Yeah, none of you skinwalkers can come in here.
Yeah, all this stuff sounds eerily familiar.
Yeah, that's right.
Once drawn, the victim is then subject to their will. It is said that encountering a skinwalker terrifies men, but elderly Navajo women simply ignore them and usher them away. If the skinwalker lingers, the elderly woman will recite a Navajo or Christian prayer to dispatch the beasts. Thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
There was a mention of cadaver dust there where he was talking about that they use this to control people.
I've read that before.
I looked that up, and cadaver dust is made from ground human bones, sometimes infants, ideally from the relative of a skinwalker. And it's much like in voodoo practice, The dust is blown in the face of the intended victim, where once ingested causes paralysis and hallucinations, turning the person into kind of a zombie.
A zombie, yep.
Yeah. And then they can be controlled by the Skinwalker by suggestion. Fortunately, the effects are short-term and the person returns to normal once the effects wear off.
Yeah, normal.
All right.
If you can be normal after that having happened to you.
Reminds me of the movie Serpent and the Rainbow. It's a pretty interesting, cool movie about that. Okay. The Uinta Basin spans between the northeastern corner of Utah and the northwestern corner of Colorado. The area was populated for over 1,000 years by the Fremont people, which is likely the name given to an amalgamation of different unrelated cultures that resided in the region. By the 4th century, the Uinta Utes and the Navajo tribes gained footholds in the area and eventually drove out or assimilated the remnants of the Fremont by 1300 AD. In 1776, 2 Franciscan priests and Atanasio Dominguez and Silvestre Velez de Escalante set out to find an overland route through the largely unexplored continental interior from Santa Fe, New Mexico to the Spanish missions in Las Californias. This route came to be known as the Old Spanish Trail. Their travels brought them to the banks of the Green River in the Uinta Basin, which they described as, quote, meadows abounding in pasturage and good land for raising crops with facilities for irrigation. By 1825, William Ashley and Antony Robideau established fur trade operations in the basin from Fort Robideau and Fort Uinta. But by 1944, the Utes rebelled against the harsh treatment and burned down Fort Robideau and killed the occupants. By 1848, conflicts arose between the Utes and the Navajo, which drove many of the Navajo north out of the basin.
So wait, they burned the fort in 1844? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. I thought you said 1944. I was like,
1844. I might have said 1944,
okay.
but
Can't
I
have
meant
19.
Yes.
Okay, 1844.
This next part, I have to admit, I did not know this because this is something that's largely not discussed. I had no idea. You always hear about like the standard model version of the Skinwalker is that it was a curse placed on the Utes by the Navajo.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the standard story. Maybe that's not quite factual.
Not entirely the...
Yeah. Okay. In 1852, Brigham Young, president of the Latter-day Saints, ordered a small expedition into the Uinta Basin to determine its suitability for developing settlements there. Mormon ranchers moved into the area and plowed up the land and used up much of the remainder as feeding grounds for their large herds of cattle, driving out the game that was once the Native Americans' primary food source. This inevitably led to conflict, and in October of 1853, known as the Walker War, where the Mormon settlers killed many of the Utes and drove most of the remainder out of the region. But in 1861, President Abraham Lincoln wrote a presidential order setting aside the Uinta Basin as an Indian reservation. To get the Utes to move back into the reservation, they were promised $1,100,000 per year for 60 years plus food, supplies, and homes. But the order was not ratified by Congress for several years, with no money and little aid provided in the interim. Betrayed, driven from their land, and with their food sources depleted, the Utes resorted to cattle rustling. The Mormons retaliated, and hostilities escalated, resulting in yet another war. In 1863, Kit Carson and Ute agent Alfred Pfeiffer encouraged the antagonism felt between the Utes and the Navajo. The continuous pressure from the Utes and the New Mexican allies finally caused a massive surrender of an estimated 2/3 of the Navajo population, 8,000 of which whom went on what became known as the Long Walk before finally being incarcerated at Fort Sumner, New Mexico. In 1859, the Ute population in the region was approximately 4,500, but by the end of all the hostilities in 1877, the result of the war and the starvation had dwindled their numbers to approximately 800. The exile of the Navajo from their lands and the poor living conditions led them to believe that their gods had abandoned them. The Naldu Shai, or Skinwalkers, were blamed for the bad fortune. Before this, the Skinwalkers were considered useful in many ways and helped their brothers and sisters when called upon. But after generations of assisting the tribe, they were betrayed. In 1878, tribe members reportedly found a collection of witch artifacts wrapped in a copy of the Treaty of Fort Sumner, buried in the belly of a dead person. It was all the proof they needed. A tribal leader named Manuelito led a witch hunt where 40 Skinwalkers were killed. This came to be known as the Navajo Witch Purge. The Skinwalkers who somehow survived the massacre were forced to hide their abilities and start practicing in secret, away from the peering eyes of their tribesmen. But the rift formed due to the betrayal, and the Skinwalkers vowed their revenge. So I had never heard any of this regarding the Mormons coming in and taking over the land. Generally, you hear the Utes intervening and kind of driving out the Navajo, but it seems like there was more going on than just that, especially when you had Kit Carson kind of trying to antagonize and create even yet more conflict between them. So
I had heard of the witch hunt. I don't remember it specifically being started off by the witch artifacts being wrapped up in the treaty or whatever. That's interesting for sure. But the part like you were talking about, the part where they're saying that the Skinwalkers used to be considered beneficial.
Right. I think this might tie into something later that relates to questions about Skinwalker Ranch.
But how are they beneficial if they have to do those horrible things to become a Skinwalker?
We'll talk more about that soon.
Okay. God,
part of the stuff I'm working on, right? Okay, so let me continue. In 1887, yet another betrayal took place when Senator Harry Doss pushed a bill through Congress that ended tribal ownership of reservations, allotting land to individual Indians and putting the rest of the reservations back into the public domain for development. On February 4th, 1913, John Campbell Lutz was issued a land patent by the Bureau of Land Management for a homestead on the Uinta Ore Reservation. Upon his death in October of 1942, Henry Lutz became heir to the property. The land was later sold to Benton Locke in June of 1945, but due to delinquent taxes, he was forced to sell the property to Kenneth and Edith Myers for the sum of $5,000 on April 14th, 1961. Kenneth Myers attended Brigham Young University and was ordained a Mormon elder and served as a missionary from 1923 to 1925. The Myers lived together on the property until Kenneth passed away on April 26, 1987, leaving Edith as sole ownership. Edith continued to live on the property until her passing on March 3rd, 1994. A few months later, the property was sold to Terry and Gwen Sherman, and the legend of the Skinwalker soon came into prominence. The reason I find that important is that there have been a lot of debates as to whether any of the unusual phenomenon recorded on the ranch was ever reported prior to the Shermans.
Yeah.
And remember, well, we'll get to this. The Shermans reported strange things when they moved in.
That's right.
Which was related to the Myers.
Yeah.
But there's not necessarily any record of anything going on before that.
Yeah.
But that could be in the secret texts of the Mormons.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm wondering whether the fact that Kenneth was a missionary, a Mormon missionary, and the fact that if we give any credence to a Skinwalker curse on,
Yeah.
they would hold that curse would have been against Mormons
Right.
or Utes.
Yeah.
And so if the Lutz or the Litzers, or should I say the Locks that lived there before were not Mormon, they may not have experienced the phenomena.
Yeah, but I mean, they can also curse land, right? You don't have to specifically curse a bloodline of people or.
Well, that's what I mean. In other words, the curse may have been on the land.
Yeah.
But it may not have necessarily acted out against anyone that it had not harmed them.
Yeah. But it started working on the scientists and other people, so.
Right.
But they may have been antagonizing it, so.
Right. And I think that's some of what we'll be talking about. When the Shermans moved onto the property, they immediately noticed heavy